On Christmas Eve 2022, what should have been a joyous evening of celebration turned into a nightmare for Elle Edwards, her family, and the community of Wallasey Village in Wirral, England. Elle was a 26-year-old beautician, described by her dad as bubbly and beautiful. One minute she was preparing for a loving get-together with her family and thinking all of her dreams and hopes for 2023. The next, she was dead, the victim of a senseless act that would shock an entire nation. But why would Connor Chapman fire a submachine gun at Elle? Did they know each other? And how did this attack tie into the general context in Liverpool and the UK? Let's explore Elle Edwards' tragic death, everything that led to it, everything that followed, and how we can use this story to make the world a more peaceful place.
She's just a fantastic human being. Beautiful. Hearts of gold.
Elle Edwards was a kind young woman with her whole life ahead of her. At 26, she was building a successful career as a cosmetologist at the Nova Studio beauty salon and had previously worked as a dental nurse. Her father, Tim Edwards, described her in glowing terms. How can I put across how she was to people who don't know her? Great, beautiful, kind, giving, always looking out for people, especially her family. Bubbly, always had a laugh. She set her own goals and was achieving them, and she did it with a smile on her face.
She's the type of person that she would walk in a room and everyone would gravitate towards her because she was always smiling, she was beautiful looking, she was a hugger.
Elle always smiled because she enjoyed life, but also because she wanted to see those around her smile.
She would do silly things, stupid things to make people laugh. But then she would also have the caring side of her, where she would take the time to make sure you were all right. Elle's
story screams the unfair truth. Sometimes it's the brightest stars that burn out first, leaving the rest of us in a shadow. On Christmas Eve 2022, Elle and her sister had flown in from Dubai to spend the holidays with family. During the flight, they chatted about their plans for Christmas, all the presents they had bought for their loved ones, all the tasty treats that would be on the table, and all the gossip that they wanted to share with their parents. They also talked about their dreams. 2023 was around the corner, and these two had many plans and goals. After all, they were in their 20s, the time for looking into the future and dreaming big. But before Elle and her sister could put their plans into action, they went to the Lighthouse Pub in Wallasey Village. This was their hometown and a place that they always felt safe and welcomed. They were going to party for a bit and then join their family at home. Surveillance footage captured Elle in high spirits, hugging friends, smiling, dancing, and enjoying the festive atmosphere. The pub was filled with people celebrating the holiday season, creating a warm and joyful atmosphere, and lots of old friends were ecstatic to reunite with Elle that night. Little did anyone know that this joyous evening would end in tragedy, forever changing the lives of Elle's family and the entire community. At around 11:50 p.m., the sound of gunshots shattered the festive atmosphere. What had been a scene of celebration moments before suddenly became one of chaos and terror. Detective Superintendent Sue Combs described the horrific scene in a news conference on Christmas Day.
Tragically, the victim, a 26-year-old woman, had suffered a serious gunshot injury to her head. She was taken to Arrow Park Hospital, but sadly passed away shortly afterwards. Her family have been informed, and on today, which should be a day with friends celebrating, they are coming to terms with this tragic loss.
Superintendent Combs also said that at the time, the local PD didn't believe Elle was the intended target. The shooting left the community in shock, struggling to comprehend how such violence could erupt on what should have been a peaceful night of celebration. The medical examination after Elle's death revealed the severe nature of her injuries. She was struck by 2 bullets in the head. One bullet entered the back of her head, traveled through her brain, and exited near her right eye. The second bullet also penetrated her skull and entered her brain. 4 men were also injured in the attack, with a 28-year-old man from nearby Beechwood suffering severe injuries. The other 3 men, aged 22, 24, and 33, sustained non-life-threatening wounds. For Elle's family, the news was devastating. Tim Edwards recalled the moment he heard of his daughter's death.
It was not real. It wasn't real. It was not real. And of course, Christmas will never be the same. Never. there'd be no celebration.
Just a few hours ago, Tim had spoken to Elle on the phone. They discussed the Christmas meeting and planned to wrap the family presents together. The suddenness and senselessness of Elle's death made it all the more difficult for her loved ones to process, turning what should have been a time of joy into one of unimaginable grief. And as the investigation revealed what had really happened, Elle's death became even more senseless and tragic. Maryside PD launched an immediate investigation into the shooting, acknowledging on TV that it was urgent to bring those responsible to justice. Detective Superintendent David McLaughlin appealed for witness and anyone with CCTV or mobile phone footage to come forward, understanding that the community cooperation would be crucial in solving the case. And before long, there was CCTV footage, and a very disturbing one to see. Surveillance footage revealed crucial details about the attack, offering investigators a clearer picture of how events unfolded. The footage showed a dark-colored Mercedes pulling into the pub's parking lot, with the driver positioning the car for a quick getaway. This level of planning suggested that the attack was premeditated, rather than a spontaneous act of violence. After observing the scene for a while, the attacker approached the pub from the side, fired 12 shots, then fled in the Mercedes. The calculated nature of the attack highlighted the cold-blooded mindset of those involved in gang violence, willing to open fire in a crowded public space with no regard for the innocent lives.
Her killing marked the 5th fatal shooting in Merseyside since August last year. An innocent life lost with remarkable consequences.
As the investigation progressed, it became clear that Elle was not the intended target of the attack. Detective Superintendent Sue Combs stated, "We do not believe that the victim in this case has been targeted. She was out enjoying Christmas with her sister and friends at what should have been a peaceful time." This revelation underscored the indiscriminate nature of gang violence and how it can claim the lives of those entirely uninvolved in gang activities. The detective soon learned that the shooting was likely connected to an ongoing feud between rival gangs from Woodchurch and Ford Estates. The intended targets were believed to be Jake Duffy and Kieran Selby, members of the rival Beechwood gang, who were also at the pub that night. And that's how Elle died that night, in front of her screaming sister. Collateral damage in a brutal, idiotic war. Over the following weeks, the detectives made several arrests in connection with the case. On January 11th, 2023, they announced the arrests of 2 key suspects, 22-year-old Connor Chapman and a 23-year-old woman in Central Wales. These arrests marked a significant breakthrough in the case, bringing hope to Elle's family and the community that justice would be served. Tim said, "It just means he's off the streets. Someone else is not going to suffer at the hands of him." Unfortunately, Elle was his last victim, but thankfully she will be the last person he does anything to, and he can go fade away. Connor Chapman quickly emerged as the primary suspect in Elle's murder. His extensive criminal history dating back to his early teens painted a picture of a young man deeply entrenched in a life of crime. By the age of 20, Chapman had amassed 19 convictions for 43 offenses, ranging from shoplifting and car theft to possession of illegal substances and carrying a weapon in public. This pattern of escalating criminal behavior is often seen in individuals in gang activity, highlighting the importance of early intervention to prevent young people from becoming entrenched in such lifestyles. Chapman was charged with Elle's murder, along with 2 counts of attempted murder, 3 counts of unlawful and malice wounding with intent to do grievous bodily harm, possession of a firearm with intent to endanger life, possession of ammunition with intent to endanger life, and handling stolen goods. The severity and range of these charges reflected the gravity of the crime and its impact on multiple victims. A second man, 20-year-old Thomas Waring, was charged with possession of a prohibited weapon and assisting an offender. As it was revealed in court, he was with Chapman that night, helping him in the attack and in disposing of evidence afterwards. The trial of Connor Chapman and Thomas Waring began at Liverpool Crown Court and lasted for 3.5 weeks. It was hugely mediatized. Gang violence was not news in the UK, but this case was particularly gruesome and senseless. People just couldn't grasp how an innocent young woman could lose her life in this way on Christmas Eve. The prosecution presented a compelling case, detailing how Chapman had spent 3 hours waiting outside the Lighthouse pub for Kieran Selby and Jake Duffy, members of the rival Beechwood gang. Armed with a Scorpion submachine gun, Chapman fired 12 shots at the pub, his intended targets, but also fatally wounding Elle Edwards. The use of such a powerful weapon in a public space highlighted the extreme danger posed by gang members with access to firearms.
There's no winners with gun crime. There's no winners. You pick up a gun or you pick up a knife, your future's over. And it's dead simple. Do not pick that knife up, do not pick up that gun. Because the minute you do, your life is over.
Chapman denied all charges, claiming he was at home wrapping Christmas presents at the time of the shooting. However, the evidence against him was substantial. His DNA was found on bullet casings at the scene and on a glove recovered from Waring's home that matched one worn by the gunman. The forensic evidence played a crucial role in linking Chapman to the crime. But even with all of these pointing at him, he continued to act innocent.
Chapman has continued to deny his involvement in Elle's death, forcing her family to endure the ordeal of a trial where they have had to relive over and over the last moments of her life. His cowardly actions on that night rightly shocked the whole of Merseyside and the UK. To fire at his intended targets while they were stood outside in a crowd shows the arrogance and contempt he had for anyone else. He then tried to evade justice by taking himself off to Wales, where he was eventually detained 2 weeks after Elle's murder. He has continued to deny his guilt throughout the trial, but the jury has seen through his lies and rightly convicted him.
As if he could get any more disgusting. The jury also heard about the ongoing feud between Chapman's Woodchurch estate-based gang and the rival group from the Beechwood estate. This context helped explain the motive behind the shooting, though it did not do anything to lessen the senselessness of Elle's death. The details of this gang rivalry provided insight into the cyclical nature of gang violence, where retaliatory attacks often lead to an escalation of conflict and innocent casualties. Tim couldn't have put it any better.
And then it's like a ripple effect, and it is absolutely pointless. It solves nothing.
After deliberating for just under 4 hours, the jury unanimously found Chapman guilty of all charges. Thomas Waring was also found guilty on all counts. During the sentencing, the judge labeled Connor Chapman a highly dangerous man who didn't care who was hit when he opened fire. Tim also doubled down on that.
I can't begin to understand how someone's mind says, we'll get in a car and we'll drive to a pub full of people with a machine gun and I'm going to open it up and fire it into that pub. Where does that thought come from? Who has that thought?
On July 7th, 2023, Connor Chapman was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 48 years before he could be considered for parole. The judge told him,
"And what you did, Connor Chapman, to those 6 victims was as wicked as it was shocking. You murdered Elle Edwards, bringing an end to her young life."
Thomas Waring was sentenced to 9 years in prison for his role in the crime. These sentences sent a clear message about the gravity with which the justice system views gang violence and related offenses. One chapter was over. Chapman and his trusted helper are behind bars for a long time. But the story was far from over for Elle's loved ones, who were just coming to terms with what had happened. The mark left by a monster like Chapman is hard to put into words. It's not as easy as one life snuffed out. Elle's mom, Gaynor, spoke publicly for the first time at Chapman's sentencing. She just couldn't bring herself to talk about her daughter's death until then, and she simply said,
I still think she'll come home. I cannot put into words how much I miss and love her.
Elle's brother also spoke that day.
The days that followed were just horrific. Visiting my sister lying in the mortuary looking as beautiful as ever with a small patch above her right eye. That moment will never ever leave me. I shouldn't have been there and she didn't deserve this.
And so did Elle's grandmother, which she said is even more heartbreaking.
Elle was beyond caring, beyond kind, beyond generous and loving. She was very special to me and my best friend. If I were to die tomorrow, the coroner would write on my death certificate, cause of death. She died of a broken heart. I miss my angel princess so much it hurts.
Tim appeared on TV telling people he would spend the rest of his life making sure Chapman never came out of prison.
Thankfully now he's got 48 years and hopefully he never sees Christmas again. If I'm lucky enough to still be around for a long time, yeah, I would do my best to make sure he never comes out of jail. Tim
has channeled his grief into a determination to create something positive from this tragedy. He hopes to start a foundation in Elle's name to help reduce gun violence.
There has to be a positive that comes out of it. She can't be forgotten.
This desire to effect change is a common response among families affected by gang violence, often leading to grassroots efforts to combat the issues and support other victims. The community's response to Elle's death was overwhelming, demonstrating the impact one life can have and the collective grief felt when it is senselessly taken. Hundreds of people lined the streets for her funeral, braving the rain to pay their respects. The Lighthouse pub closed on the day of the funeral as a sign of respect, and local businesses and residents showed their support for the Edwards family in various ways. This outpouring of support only goes to show that many people want a change, and the light at the end of the tunnel is still far away when it comes to gang violence in the UK. The tragic death of Elle Edwards is not an isolated incident, but part of a troubling trend of gang violence in the UK. Gang violence has become an increasingly serious issue in many parts of the UK, particularly in major cities. According to the data from the National Crime Agency, there are an estimated 30,000 people involved in serious and organized crime in the UK, many of whom are associated with urban street gangs. This figure is alarming. In London, Manchester, Liverpool, and Birmingham, gang activity is particularly prevalent. These cities account for 65% of the firearm homicides in the country, highlighting the concentration of gang-related violence in urban areas.
There's a horrendous mentality amongst a lot of young people in Croydon with a lack of regard for life. Just a really poor attitude in general.
However, the problem is not limited to large metropolitan areas. Smaller cities and towns are also grappling with gang-related issues. This spread of gang activity to areas previously less affected is a concerning trend, suggesting that the problem is evolving and expanding. One of the most significant developments in UK gang activity in recent years has been the emergence of county lines drug trafficking. This involves urban gangs expanding their drug dealing operations into smaller towns and rural areas, often exploiting vulnerable young people to act as couriers and dealers. The National Crime Agency reports that there are over 2,000 individual deal line numbers in operation in the UK, with over 200 branded county lines originating from London alone. The expansion of gang activity has brought increased violence and exploitation to areas previously less affected by such issues. Gangs are developing new tactics, authorities are falling behind, and the first to pay are vulnerable kids and teens recruited by these monsters. Understanding why gang violence is on the rise is crucial to addressing the problem. First off, money problems are a big deal. In areas where poverty is through the roof and jobs are scarce, gangs can look like a quick fix for cash and respect. When young people see no way out of their tough situation, joining a gang might seem like their only shot at making it.
Sometimes it can be queasy, like you don't know how they're going to use that. You know, if we have an argument, are you going to use it, or is it just as a thing, as a show, just to protect yourself?
Family life plays a huge role too. With more kids growing up in single-parent homes or with parents who are always working, there's often a lack of guidance. Gangs step in, offering a sense of family and belonging that these kids are missing.
So why are people carrying weapons?
There's many factors. Trauma, not having a father figure in the house, seeing crimes from a young age and thinking that it's okay, and no one's told them that it's not okay.
School troubles are another red flag. When kids start skipping class or failing grades, they're more likely to fall in with the wrong crowd. Schools are supposed to give structure and opportunities, but when that falls apart, gangs can look pretty appealing. Now throw social media into the mix and things get even messier. Gangs are all over these platforms, recruiting new members and stirring up trouble with rival groups. It's like adding fuel to the fire, making conflicts blow up faster than ever. Budget cuts to youth programs aren't helping either. With fewer after-school activities and community centers, children have nowhere to go and nothing positive to do. It's like leaving the door wide open for gangs to waltz right in. The drug trade is still a major player in all of this. The promise of quick, easy money is hard to resist, especially for teens who don't see many other options. And when gangs fight over who controls the drug market, things can get violent fast. Just look at what happened to Elle Edwards. Let's not forget about how gangs are glamorized in some music and media. It can make the gang lifestyle look cool and exciting, downplaying all the dangers and dark sides. One psychologist in the UK has this take on it.
Potential. If you feel you have potential in life, if you feel there's a possibility you might go on to have an interesting career, you might fall in love, you might have a great life, then you're much less likely to get caught up in drugs or knives or guns or any of those things. But if you feel you have no potential, you feel you've got nothing to lose. You don't value your own life because you think you're not going to go anywhere, nothing's ever going to happen that's worth living, and you don't value anyone else's either.
So what happens when gang activity takes over a neighborhood? It's not pretty. Innocent people get caught in the crossfire like Elle. Everyday places turn into danger zones. People start living in fear, always looking over their shoulders. This fear can tear communities apart, with folks isolating themselves and losing trust in their neighbors. Businesses start avoiding these areas, which just makes the economic situation worse. It's a vicious cycle. Fewer jobs mean more people turn to gangs, and round it goes. Local services take a hit too. Hospitals have to deal with more violent injuries, and the police are stretched thin trying to keep up. This affects everyone in the community, not just those involved in the gangs. For the young people who do join gangs, the risks are huge. They're facing potential injury or death, addiction, mental health issues, and criminal records that can mess up their future for good. And once they're in, it's incredibly tough to get out. Many feel trapped, scared of what might happen if they try to leave. The ripple effects of gang violence spread far and wide. Elle Edwards' death didn't just devastate her family, it shocked the entire community. These incidents leave lasting scars on everyone involved. So what can we do about all this? Well, it's going to take a team effort. We need early intervention programs to catch at-risk kids before they get pulled into gang life. Community initiatives can help too, getting everyone involved in making their neighborhoods safer.
You don't need to tell a kid something, you need to understand why they're doing it and then break down that slowly but surely with them and then help them lead to the next stage of their life.
Education is key. We need to give young people the real deal about gang life, not the glamorized version, but the harsh reality. Youth programs in sports, arts, and job training can give kids positive alternatives and help them build skills and confidence. Smart policing strategies are important, focusing on disrupting gang operations, but this needs to be balanced with community engagement to avoid creating more resentment. We can't forget about those trying to leave gang life either. Rehabilitation programs can offer the support and skills they need to start fresh. Better teamwork between different agencies, police, social services, schools, and healthcare can lead to more effective responses to gang issues. And of course, we need laws and policies that tackle the root cause of gang activity and provide the right penalties for gang-related crimes.
Early intervention, work hard at the roots. We've got to do that. And that, by the way, isn't about yet more money. It's about spending the budgets that we have wisely.
The UK government has started to take this seriously with strategies to tackle drug dealing and knife crime. However, critics say we need to do more to address the underlying issues of poverty and lack of opportunities that push young people towards gangs in the first place.
We need to go back and we need to invest in schools, we need to invest in youth clubs, we need to invest in community groups, and that's not happening.
It's a complex problem with no easy fixes, but by understanding why gang violence happens and how it affects everyone, we can start working towards real solutions. It's going to take all of us, communities, schools, families, and government, working together to create a safer future for everyone. The story of Elle Edwards serves as a stark reminder of the devastating impact of gang violence. Her senseless death on what should have been a joyous Christmas Eve celebration reminds us that fighting gang violence is urgent. For young people, Elle's story should be a wake-up call about the real-life consequences of gang activity. It's crucial to understand that involvement in gangs doesn't just affect those directly participating. It puts the entire community at risk and can result in tragedy for innocent bystanders.
And then we move on to the next thing. Got to keep going. It's going to be hard for everyone.
The best way to honor Elle Edwards' memory is to work towards a future where no more innocent lives are lost to senseless gang violence. By understanding the issues, supporting each other, and making positive choices, we can all contribute to creating safer, stronger communities for everyone. Hey, thanks for watching. What are your thoughts on this story? Can gang violence ever end? What can we do about it? Leave a comment and like and subscribe before you go. See you soon. Stay safe.